May 8, 1945, Victory in Europe Day. Crowds in London, New York, and Moscow erupt in celebration. The Axis powers have fallen. The Second World War is finally over. But even as the confetti settles, a new battle is already taking shape. One without trenches, but just as dangerous. The Cold War. At its heart, the Cold War wasn't just a conflict between two nations. It was a battle between two ideologies, two visions for the future of humanity. On one side, the United States, championing capitalism, democracy, and individual freedoms. On the other, the Soviet Union, advocating communism, state control, and absolute authority. The question is, who turned former allies into bitter enemies? Who was truly responsible for the Cold War? July 1945, Potsdam, Germany. Inside a dimly lit conference hall, three of the world's most powerful men sit around a long wooden table. To the left, Joseph Stalin, leader of the Soviet Union. To the right, Harry Truman, the new U.S. president, replacing Franklin D. Roosevelt. At the head, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. But this is not a meeting of friends. It is a meeting of necessity, a desperate attempt to determine the future of a war-torn world. The discussions are tense. Stalin demands control over Eastern Europe, arguing that Russia needs a buffer zone to prevent future invasions. Truman, however, sees Stalin's actions as a dangerous grab for power. The world had just rid itself of one dictator, and Truman fears another is rising in his place. Before the conference ends, a seismic shift occurs. Truman informs Stalin that the United States has successfully developed the atomic bomb. The message is clear. America now has unmatched power. But instead of intimidating Stalin, the revelation fuels his own ambitions. The arms race has just begun. The months following Potsdam saw Europe being split into two camps, East and West. The Soviets tightened their grip on Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and beyond, installing pro-communist governments under Moscow's control. To the West, this was clear aggression. March 5, 1946, Winston Churchill delivers a speech in Fulton, Missouri, where he utters the now famous phrase, "An iron curtain has descended across the continent." The line is drawn. The world is no longer one. But was Stalin just securing his nation's safety after suffering 27 million deaths in World War II? Or was he using fear as an excuse to expand his empire? And was the United States right to respond aggressively? Or were they escalating tensions unnecessarily? March 12, 1947, U.S. President Harry Truman announces the Truman Doctrine. He declares that the United States will support any country resisting communism. Soon after, the U.S. sends massive aid to Greece and Turkey to prevent them from falling into Soviet hands. To Stalin, this is an act of war without weapons. If the U.S. can influence countries to turn away from communism, then the Soviet Union must act to spread its ideology further. The world is now locked in a battle for control, not through tanks and guns, but through diplomacy, propaganda, and economic pressure. Truman's defenders argue that he was preventing Soviet expansion. Critics claim he was being overly aggressive, turning a regional struggle into a global one. Who was truly at fault? The Cold War escalates further in 1948. The United States, Britain, and France introduce a new currency in West Germany to boost its economy. Stalin sees this as a direct threat. His response? The Berlin Blockade. For nearly a year, Soviet forces cut off all road and rail access to West Berlin, attempting to starve the city into submission. But the West doesn't back down. Instead, they launched the Berlin Airlift, massive planes flying in food and supplies around the clock. Over 200,000 flights keep the city alive until Stalin finally lifts the blockade. Was Stalin the aggressor for trying to starve West Berlin? Or was the U.S. provoking the Soviets by strengthening Germany so soon after World War II? By 1949, both superpowers had nuclear weapons. Fear of total destruction spread across the globe. The arms race was in full swing, and both sides built thousands of warheads. One wrong move could mean the end of humanity. It wasn't just about weapons. Propaganda fueled hatred. Children in the U.S. were taught to duck and cover in case of a nuclear attack. In the Soviet Union, schools warned that America sought to destroy their way of life. The paranoia was absolute. So, who started the Cold War? Stalin's aggressive expansion, Truman's hardline policies, or was it inevitable? A clash between two irreconcilable ideologies. Historians are still divided. Some blame Stalin for his ruthless control over Eastern Europe. Others blame the U.S. for turning every global conflict into a battle against communism. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. But one thing is clear: the Cold War shaped the modern world. It changed how nations viewed each other, how wars were fought, and how power was wielded. And though the Cold War officially ended in 1991, its echoes remain in global rivalries today. Have we truly moved on? Or are we simply waiting for the next Cold War to begin?